Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing some episodes of Doctor Who that I find to be underrated. Now, there's no real criteria for this, it's just some stories that I feel don't get the love that they deserve. I'm going to do one from each of the modern Doctors, and yes, this is modern Doctor Who. I'm going to be discussing spoilers in this video because I'm expecting that if you're watching this, then you've already seen the show. So let's first start with the Ninth Doctor. Boomtown. This is a story that I just really enjoy. It has some very interesting stuff in here, using the Slitheen better than they've ever been used before. Now, earlier in the season, you have the two-parter with them, which is a story that I find works less each time I revisit it. But this story, focusing on just one Slitheen, just that one character, and focusing on the Ninth Doctor's responsibility with taking her to authorities who will kill her. Now, it's very interesting to see how this episode deals with that, and the scenes that we get with her and the Doctor talking about this. It's a great blend of comedic, lighthearted stuff in this story, and very much serious, grounded drama. There's a lot going on here, and I really thoroughly enjoy the dynamic of Rose, the Doctor, and Jack. I think they're great together, and I remember Mickey working well in this one too. I think this is a really solid story, and one that seems to get a little bit more love as it goes along, but still doesn't get as much as it probably should. I don't think it's a great story, but it is really solid, and there's a lot to enjoy in this one. The next story I want to talk about is Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. This is, I think, a really solid introduction to the Cybermen in modern Doctor Who. You get a really entertaining parallel universe story with some really interesting scenes with Rose and her family. That is, I think, the best, most interesting part of the story, is seeing what that kind of brings out. Because obviously she has met her father before, but this version of him that she is meeting never met her. The dog is named Rose. This version of her mother also never met her. These people don't know her, but you can't help but understand why she is so fascinated in them, because I feel that I would be equally fascinated in these people that are in a way my family members, but not really. And that aspect of the story is really interesting, and we get some similar stuff going on with Mickey, and on the whole, I think this is just a very interesting introduction to these foes and sets up what happens later in the season, but stands on its own as a solid Cyberman tale. It's just a good alternate take on the Cybermen. It doesn't focus much on elements of them that maybe some people would like to see, myself included, which is the more body horror kind of elements where you can really tell there's a person behind there. In this case, yeah, there's a person behind there, but it's very much a different take because they are so mechanical. They are these mechanical men who just stomp around, and in that respect, they are different, but I still like this take on them, and I think they are a good presence within this story, which is a solid two-parter that seems to get a little bit of a mixed reception. Some people seem to quite like it, some people do not, and I am definitely one of the people that quite likes this one, and I think that it deserves a little bit more love than it gets. Cold War. Now, this is a story with Clara and the 11th Doctor. Now, this is a companion dynamic that I often hear cited as one of the weakest in New Who, and I have to be honest here, I think that they work together sometimes. They're not one of my favorite dynamics by far, because they only really got 10 episodes together, but I do think they are solid, and I think that Jenna Coleman is good as this character, and the Doctor is solid as always, and I think this is a story that just stands on its own as a good episode of Doctor Who. You can take this one out of the season, just watch it. You don't have to know anything about the rest of what's going on in that season, as is true for the majority of Series 7, because that was just the way that it was made. And I think this is one of the more solid tales from that season. There is a lot to like, particularly with this setting. It's very much a base Under Siege story with one singular Ice Warrior, and that is the threat. And I just think this one works so well. This setting of this submarine and it being quite claustrophobic and the Ice Warrior going around here, it really is quite good, and I think it gets more hate than it deserves because it's just a tight, creepy tale that honestly I think is genuinely good. The Girl Who Died. Okay, now this is one that for people that don't like Series 9, they tend to really not like this. And if you don't like Series 9, this one probably isn't for you. But this is one that I personally feel is quite underrated. I really do like the style of this episode. It's got this mix of comedy, lightheartedness throughout the entire thing, and also having room to have more serious moments, particularly towards the end. And if you don't like stories that are lighthearted like this one, or you think this one is just too silly, then yeah, you're probably not going to enjoy this one if you revisit it, but it is one that I find to be underrated. I find to be really enjoyable because it's just fun. And it introduces you to the character of Ashildr and the setting of this Viking town. And when they kill that character off, it is a bit of a tragic moment. And the very ending of this story is particularly interesting to me because the doctor ends up making her immortal. And why this intrigues me so much is because of the way this story ends with that shot of her standing in the middle, watching as time just passes around her. It just keeps going and going. And I love that shot because it really well sets up what we're going to see later with that character, what will pay off later in Series 9. And if you don't like the style of this story, if you don't like Ashildr as a character, then you're not going to enjoy this one because those are two crucial things to having fun with the story and to enjoying what it's trying to do. And I personally really like the style of this story. And I personally really like Ashildr and how she's set up within this one. And I also like how it's paid off later. So this one really works for me, and I find it to be quite underrated in Capaldi's era, which is also a rather underrated era. It takes you away. Now, this is the single most underrated story on this entire list, because this is also the best story on this entire list. I love It Takes You Away. It was my favorite story of Series 11. It was the story that really thoroughly captivated me and thoroughly engaged me and just gave me an experience that I felt like I hadn't really gotten from the show at all up to that point. It was so weird and interesting and fun and entertaining and went in all of these different directions throughout that provided something different. And it ultimately pays off in the end when Graham does get to meet Grace, and it has this really emotional ending there where he finds that, yeah, this, as much as he would love to be with her, he knows this isn't the real her and he can't stay here. And that ending is quite interesting because we find that the Solo Tract is this sentient universe thing. And as much as it would like to be a part of our universe, it just cannot, which is honestly a little bit tragic. And I just really like the scope that this story goes for. It goes to several different locations and just manages to just drag you with it throughout, but it never feels like it's going too fast through this story. It just takes you where it's taking you, and it's so interesting to see all of the different kinds of feelings that you get when watching this one, or at least I do. And I really think this story deserves a lot more love than it gets, and it is the highlight of Series 11, and that's why I chose this one, because it was the story from that season that said, this is Doctor Who. So yeah, those are 5 stories that I find to be quite underrated. You're probably not going to agree with me on all of these because they are such different episodes, so it's not unlikely that there's going to be some stories on here that you don't like, and hopefully some ones that you do. And whatever your feelings are on these stories, be sure to let me know some stories that you find to be underrated that you wish got more love than they do. I'll be very interested to see what you have to say about that. And with all that said, I hope to see you around soon. I will have a ranking out for Doctor Who Season 5, and I hope you join me for that, but if not, that's totally cool, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, take care, and have a lovely week.